Hey, welcome to this new lecture, and by the end of this lecture, I'm gonna have my web app published online. So instead of this, I'll have a public URL, and everyone can visit my web app, and everyone can send data and get an email to their email address. And as you can imagine, I'm going to use Heroku to deploy my files to their cloud. So we used Heroku twice in the course. We used Heroku to deploy a static Flask website, and then we used Heroku again to deploy a bokeh chart, which was again a Flask website. Now this here is going to be a little bit different, and the difference there is this time we have a database involved in this, and that means there are a few more steps that we need to go through in order to have this web application online. So it's good that you first go through the lecture named Deploying the Website to a Live Server, which is part of the section where we build the static website with Flask. In this lecture I'm going to go through those steps again, but I'm not going to stop in detail at each of them. So this is still going to work if you haven't taken that lecture already. And yeah, now I'll go through each step one by one. So let me stop this script first, Ctrl C, and yeah, these are my files. For this to work, you need an account in Heroku, and I've showed you that earlier. So you need to create an account on heroku.com, and then you need to download Heroku Toolbelt. So please do so if you haven't done already. And once you have gone through those steps, and then you go ahead and open a terminal in this directory, so in the main directory of your application. In my case, that would be this one here, demo. And as usual, what you want to do is you want to initialize a Git repository in your local directory, in your current directory. Then you also want to have these three files, so the requirements.txt file, the proc file, and the runtime.txt file. And then you upload all these files to Heroku. However, in this case, we still need these three files, but we also need to make a small change in our app.py file, which is this one here. As you can see here, this database URI is pointing to our local database. So I've got my PostgreSQL installed in my system, and that URI is pointing to my local PostgreSQL. What you want to do now is you want to change this URL to point to the Heroku database. However, we still don't know the URI of our Heroku database. And the reason we don't know that is that we still don't have a database in Heroku. So let's go ahead and create a database. Again, you need to go to your command line. So you need to log in, Heroku login. So if you haven't installed Heroku Toolbelt yet, you wouldn't be able to log into Heroku. So Heroku Toolbelt makes it possible to log into Heroku server. And yeah, harddude at hotmail.com. These are the credentials that I used to create a Heroku account, and my password there. And I'm logged in successfully. Now, databases come as add-ons in Heroku, and you can either go through to create a database through the web page. So you'd go here and create database and go to databases, and then you create a database in here. But this is not recommended. The correct way to do that is through the command line. This will also allow you to connect your database to the appropriate app. So in our case, we need to connect this database to an app which we haven't created yet. So let's first create an app in Heroku, and then we create a database and we connect the database to that app. To create an app is quite easily Heroku create the app name. Let's say data collector. Hopefully this will be free, not occupied. Yeah, that is already taken. Let's try another one. Decollector, maybe. Decollector. Alright, that was created, and now we go ahead and create a database. Databases come as add-ons in Heroku, so you'd want to say Heroku add-ons create, so you want to create a new add-on. And then Heroku, the add-on name that you want to create is Heroku PostgreSQL and a colon. And here comes the type of the database, which would be hobby dev. So you have quite a few databases which technically are the same, but this one is free. And this hobby dev, which means hobby developer, so you're making this for hobby. This particular one doesn't allow you to have more than 10,000 records rows in your database, which is still a good number, by the way. And if you want more, then you'd have to pay for another database. You can look up for that on Heroku to get the prices, but this will work great for us, so let's create that. And you need to pass a flag, the app flag, and then here you pass the name of the app that you want to connect your database to. So execute that. And yeah, database has been created and is available. This database is empty, of course it's empty, we have just created it, so know that if you have a free Heroku account like I have, you can't have more than 5 apps. And that includes databases, so if you already had 5 apps in Heroku, you wouldn't be able to create a database, because that would be counted as another app, which it's not technically an app, but it's counted as so. Now that we have a database, we need to figure out a way to get the URI of the database so that we can replace the URI in our app.py script. And to get the URI of the database, you'd say Heroku config the app decollector and execute. Yeah, that's it. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy this like that. Be careful here, if you miss a character, things won't work. So if I right click here, I copy that and paste it there. Be careful here, so we only need this part, and that should be assigned to this. And this goes here. And let me view Toggle software app, and yeah, and save. And I'll comment this out, I don't need this anymore. So please triple check this, because if you get this wrong, it will be difficult to troubleshoot it. So again, what we have is app config and then SQL Alchemy database URI, and that is equal to a string. And in that string, you should enter the database URI that we got from here. So this part in here. And yeah, what that means is, this would be the username, this would be the password up to here, and then you have @ and then the address of the server up to here, and then a colon and the port of the server. And then you have the name of the database. And then I need to add something more here, and that would be SSL mode equals to require. So what I'm doing here, I'm forcing the Postgres adapter to actually actually require SSL, because otherwise I won't be able to connect to the database through my command line, so from my Windows computer. The reason I want to connect to Heroku through my Windows computer is that I'm going to create a table in the database, and I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. So please include this part here, $SSL mode require, and yeah, make sure to save the script and then go to the command line again. Now the app file is ready to be deployed to Heroku, but we need these files, so we need the requirements.txt and the other files that I mentioned earlier. So let's go ahead and create these files. I'm going to activate the virtual environment first. So that I can create a requirements.txt file with all the packages that I have installed. However, as you know, you first need to install Gunicorn, so that Gunicorn is included in the requirements.txt file. And yeah, once you've done that, then you go ahead and pip freeze and requirements.txt. Double check the name, requirements.txt. Yeah, execute, and we have requirements.txt generated. Gunicorn is there and everything else that we need. Now I'll create a profile, profile.txt, and this should be without any extension. On a Mac and a Linux you can easily make a file without extension, but on Windows, if you go here, you have to make sure that hide extensions for known file types should be unchecked, so make sure of that. And yeah, then you can create a proc file without an extension. Then you can go ahead and edit it in Atom or Notepad or whatever you like, and that should be web Gunicorn and app for the file name. So we have app.py, and then app.py has a variable named app, so the variable where our Flask instance is stored. So app like that. And yeah, we're done with that. Proc file requirements.txt and another file called runtime.txt. So I'm using Python 3, and therefore I need to write here Python 3.5.1, because that's the available runtime for Heroku at the moment. You can check that up on the internet on Heroku webpage. So they have 3.5.1 and 2.7.11 at the moment. And no, we didn't do this in our previous lectures where I showed you how to deploy websites on Heroku. But in this lecture I'm going to create another file, and that should be named .gitignore. Actually, this is not possible on Windows, so you cannot have a file without a name. On a Mac and a Linux you don't have this problem. So the workaround here is to, I'll delete that. You know, you can create a file from the command line. You can use Notepad and then say git ignore, so the file name. Cannot find the gitignore file. Do you want to create a new file? Yes. And that will create a .ignore file. So this one here. And that's the workaround. Now what this gitignore file is it's a file where you can pass the names of the folders, of the directories, and the files that you don't want to upload to Heroku. Because you know, when you initialize a Git repository and then you add the files to the repository, all the files that are in this directory and all the directories with file inside them will be uploaded to Heroku. But sometimes you may not need some folders, some directories or files, such as virtual. So we don't need our virtual environment to upload it on Heroku, because that would be around 45 megabytes. We don't need that. Previously, when we deployed Flask websites to Heroku in our previous lectures, the virtual folder was outside of the demo folder. So the virtual directory was one level up and it wasn't included in the deployment. In this case, this is in this directory here, so it will be included in the deployment. It will be uploaded to Heroku. Therefore, we have this gitignore file that Git knows, so it is able to read the file name and that it knows what to do with the file. So within that file, you can go ahead now and it's gitignore And what you can do is you can pass the folder, the directory, and the file names that you don't want to include in deployment. So PyCache, and I have this Heroku test. I think I was doing some tests earlier, so I created this, and I don't want that to be uploaded. Also virtual, the directory. Then we have this file in here. Let me copy it. Here we are. So that was a wheel file. I don't want that to be uploaded to Heroku either. What else do we have here? Yeah, that's it. So let me double check. Yeah, PyCache, Heroku test, and CyclePG2, and yeah, that's all. Save that file, and yeah, we're basically done with generating files. Yeah, so we had procfile, runtime.txt, requirements.txt, and git ignore. Let's go back to our console now, and we're ready to deploy our files. So first of all, you need to initialize a Git repository, and we got the .git folder in there, and then git add everything, and then git commit the changes. First commit as a note. Oh, sorry, I meant to say commit with double mem. I put 3 m's there. Oh, right. And 12 files changed, so we've got 12 files added to the repository. Actually, that should be less. Maybe I've made some error here. PyCache, yeah, I have added an age in here, which shouldn't be there. And that means I'm uploading these 3 files as well to my app. That shouldn't be a problem, so let's just ignore that. It's important to not include the virtual directory because that's quite big, and you don't want to have that many files in your web application directory on Heroku. Good. We're now ready to push the changes to Heroku. First, let's make sure Heroku info. Let's see if we're connected to our app. So it says no app specified. So let's go ahead and connect our session to our app. Let it be git remote the app flag, and after that we have to enter the name of our app, dcollector, and that should do it. So yeah, now we have set git remote, which has the name Heroku. Now we go ahead and say git push Heroku, which is the name, happens to be the name of our git. So Heroku master. And you may have to wait a while here while these are applied. So we've got a Python app was detected. So and then installing Python 3.5.1, and then installing the dependencies of the packages. And yeah, that completed successfully. However, we are not done yet. I mean, we can check Heroku Heroku open, not OEPN, sorry. So I'm just checking if the website is up, so it's actually uploaded. But if you enter some data in there and you say submit, you'll get an error there. So either the server is overloaded, which is not the case, or there is an error in the application. And our error is that we have a database on Heroku because we created that earlier in the terminal session. So with this command, Heroku add-ons create Heroku PostgreSQL, but that's an empty database, so we haven't created the tables just yet. And to create a table there, we have this model here. And our table should be named data, but we haven't executed this model on Heroku. I mean, we have this table in our computer, in our local system. If you could remember, we did from app import db and then db.create all, and that created a table. So we're going to do the same on Heroku. So how do we do that? Oh, well, we do that from the command line again. And we have to open a Python session on Heroku. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to execute Python that is installed on Heroku from our command line. To do that, you say Heroku run and Python. And that will run a Python 3.5.1 session for you. Even if it's Python 2.7, that shouldn't be a problem because we're just running some basic commands here. So the version shouldn't be a problem at this point. And yeah, that's how you run a Python session. And you know, let me exit for a moment. You can also run a bash on Heroku, which is like the terminal. Heroku runs on Linux. So now that the bash is open here, you can execute Linux commands like ls will list all the files and folders that you have in the main directory, which is app.py, our app file, and then you have runtime.txt and static folder and so on. You know, we don't have this virtual folder. We have the py-cache there because I have made this typo. And yeah, if you want to see what these files contain, you can do cat and the name of the file, so cat app.py, and you'll see the code there. However, you cannot edit your files directly on Heroku. The way to edit your files is the way that I showed you earlier in the course. You know, that was a lecture named Maintaining Your Website. That's where you learn how to change something on your files. So you change that locally and then you upload the changes via Git to Heroku. And that's how it should work actually, because you have a separate development environment there and then you upload the changes to the production, so to Heroku. So please check out that lecture if you like, later on if you want to make changes. And I'll exit the bash now with exit and run Python again. So now I'm running Python on the main directory where my app.py file is located. And what that means is, you know, I can say from app, which is the app.py file, import db. We got a warning there, but I wouldn't go through that now. So things are working actually. We were able to import the db SQL Alchemy object there. And then you say db.create all, just as we did in our local system earlier when we built the application. And yeah, that's it. That is successful, and you can exit then. So now you should have a table named data, or whatever you have called it, whatever you have named it in here. So here. You should have a table in your Heroku database. And there is actually a way to prove that. You know, you can run SQL commands from your command line again, commands that point to the Heroku database. However, you should make sure that PSQL is added to your path, to your search path in your computer. So on Windows, that means psql.access should be included in your environment variables. So at the moment, mine is not included, so I'm going to go ahead and include that. So you should go to your program files, PostgreSQL, and the version folder and bin. So here, and you know, here we have this PSQL, should be among these files. PSQL, yeah, it's here. So what we need is, when you type in PSQL from the command line, you want to execute this file, and that accesses SQL queries. So what you do is you just copy this path and go to environment environment variables, so system environment variables. Go to environment variables button and then locate here, down here, the path variable. Go to edit, and you have some existing values there, so some other paths. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a semicolon in there, and then you paste your other path. So it should be like this. This is our path. Like that. Okay, okay there, okay here. And now my current terminal probably hasn't received the path yet, so I'm going to open a new one. Just says everywhere you want. So mine is at C. And I'm going to go ahead and Heroku login again. Pass my credentials. And then you want to run a command, Heroku pg psql, the app name, which is dcollector. Execute. Connecting to database, and yeah, if you see this, then that means you are connected. And now every SQL query that you do is applied to the database of your dcollector app. So the app that you specified in here. Let's say select from data. And yeah, we got 0 rows. We didn't get an error, so there exists a table called data in our database. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to browse through to my web app as a visitor, and I'm going to submit some data, and then I'm going to apply the query again in here, just so to see if those data went through. Something to be aware of is, you should add a semicolon after every SQL query that you pass in here. So now I need to go back here, and let's say Heroku open. Just a fancy thing to open your web app. Okay. Submit. Yeah, great. Now we've got the success web page successfully. Let's see now. Here. Execute the SQL query again, and we've got 1 row, which is great. But if you don't trust SQL, then go and check your email. And yeah, here is the email that I just got. So this is looking good. We have 1 people. Well, that doesn't sound very grammatically correct. So you can play around with that if you like, to send the string person when you have less than 1 submission in your database, if you want to go that fancy. Yeah, this is working great. And if you want to play around with your application, you may want to use your email address to test your application, and for that you'd have to delete your email address record from the database, because now if you submit this again, you'll get this message. If you want to delete the record, you'd say delete from data where email with an underscore equals to single quotes and your email. Oh, I forgot the semicolon. Great, now we got the message delete 1. If you apply select from data again, you get 0 rows there, and then you can start over again. So it's working. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I really hope things are working on your end. It's quite a lot of commands that you need to type in and execute there, and it's not easy to remember them. However, you have a list of all the commands, of all the steps actually, that you need to deploy a Flask web application together with a PostgreSQL database. How to deploy that on Heroku. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks a lot for being a student of my course. And I'll talk to you in the next lectures. See you.